All right, we've got quite an important and lengthy chapter to take on today, Job 38. So, without further ado, then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, okay, so God appearing within a storm is a big deal in terms of the history of religion. I'm not going to get into that. But just thinking about the whirlwind idea, I consulted the Cambridge Bible for schools and colleges, and it says, Jehovah, even when condescending to speak with men, must veil himself in the storm cloud, in which he descends and approaches the earth. Even when he is nearest us, clouds and darkness are round about him. His revelation of himself to Job, at least, was partly to rebuke him, for he had sinned against his majesty, and he veils himself in terrors. The storm is not necessarily that which Elihu describes. The art is rather generic, the meaning being that thus Jehovah spoke, namely, out of storm. So I think that's a big thing to think about, why God has to cloak himself in things like storms and fire. I could spend an hour just thinking about that. That's a big deal. Verse 2, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? You notice how much the way that the earth is described here, it's very much like a structure, like something that's built by an architect. Okay, that is a massive topic. I think you can kind of pick up on what I'm putting down there, but it needs further exploration. When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy, or who shut up the sea with doors when it brake forth, as if it had issued out of the womb. So we're getting a different sort of imagery here. When I made the cloud the garment thereof, and thick darkness a swaddling band for it, and break up for it my decreed place, and set bars and doors. I found this line confusing. So again, I consulted the very philosophical and poetic Cambridge Bible for schools and colleges. I've learned that with these different commentaries, they all have kind of sweet spots. And the Cambridge one, I think I've mentioned, is a little bit more cerebral. But it's not always the best. I should really develop a criteria for, of these ones that we just have off Bible Hub, how do we know which ones to apply? It's a lot of it's just personal taste. So this and break up for it my decreed place and set bars and doors. So it says, rather and break for it my bound, i.e., set it my appointed boundary. The expression break may refer to the deep and abrupt precipices which mark the coastline in many places. I buy that. The figures in these verses are very splendid. First, the ocean is represented as an infant giant breaking forth from the womb. It is not necessary, perhaps, to ask whether the interior of the earth be thought of as the womb of the ocean, or whether womb merely belongs to the figure of the ocean's birth. Then the infant ocean was swathed in clouds, and thick clouds were its swaddling bands. I thought that was pretty interesting. Finally, the newborn monster must be tamed by almighty power and an impassable bound set to its proud fury. Verse 11, and said, hitherto shalt thou come, but no further, and here shall thy proud waves be stayed. And so it's getting a little bit at that. The Barnes Notes in the Bible had this to say, and said, hitherto shalt thou come. This is a most sublime expression, and its full force can be felt only by one who has stood on the shores of the ocean and seen its mighty waves roll toward the beach as if in their pride they would sweep everything away, and how they are checked by the barrier which God has made. A voice seems to say to them that they may roll in their pride and grandeur so far, but no further. No increase of their force or numbers can sweep the barrier away or make any impression on the limits which God has fixed. And here shall they proud waves be stayed, margin as in Hebrew, the pride of thy waves. A beautiful image. The waves seem to advance in pride and self-confidence as if nothing could stay them. They come as if exulting in the assurance that they will sweep everything away. In a moment they are arrested and broken, and they spread out humbly and harmlessly on the beach. God fixes the limit or boundary which they are not to pass, and they lie prostrate at his feet. Verse 12, hast thou commanded the morning since thy days, and caused the dayspring to know his place? What is a dayspring? The dayspring, I think, means dawn. And if that's the case, it's interesting that they gave it a male pronoun, to know his place. See that a lot. A lot of the forces of nature and, the stars and the sun and the moon, they are given pronouns in the Old Testament at least, and probably the New Testament too. So is that just figurative language, or is there something deeper happening here? I think it is that deep. Okay. That it might take hold of the ends of the earth, that the wicked might be shaken out of it. It is turned as clay to the seal, and they stand as a garment. So this relationship between light and the earth. The Ellicott's commentary for English readers says, as clay to the seal, in the darkness every object is without form and void, just as clay or wax, which has no distinctness of shape till the seal is applied, and then the impression is clear and manifest. So at the coming of the daylight after darkness, we should rather render, it is changed as clay under the seal, and all things stand forth as in their proper raiment. I thought that was pretty beautiful. Verse 15, and from the wicked their light is withholden, and the high arm shall be broken. Hast thou entered into the springs of the sea, or hast thou walked in search of the depth? 17, have the gates of death been opened unto thee, or hast thou seen the doors of the shadow of death? Hast thou perceived the breadth of the earth? Declare if thou knowest it all. Where is the way where light dwelleth? And as for darkness, where is the place thereof? Verse 20, that thou shouldest take it to the bound thereof, that thou shouldest know the paths to the house thereof. Again, this was a little archaic for my taste. Not that I don't like it, it's just I don't immediately understand everything. So to translate, I went to the Pulpit commentary. They say that thou shouldest take it to the bound thereof. Can Job take light and darkness and lead them to their proper places and make them observe their proper bounds as God can? And if that thou shouldest know the paths to the house thereof. I thought it was interesting. So, yeah, thinking about light and darkness in this way, taking them back to where they belong. Verse 21, knowest thou it because thou wast then born, or because the number of thy days is great? Clearly, Job was not around at the beginning of time to know these things. Hast thou entered into the treasures of the snow, or hast thou seen the treasures of the hail, which I have reserved against the time of trouble, against the day of battle and war? I thought this was really interesting. It's like one of those, you could just blow by this, but this, verse 23, the Pulpit commentary says, in regards to which I have reserved against the time of trouble, hail is reckoned throughout Scripture as one of the ministers of the divine vengeance. Its destructive effect upon crops, even in temperate latitudes, is indicated by the insurances against damage from hail, which even in our own country, so many farmers think it worth their while to pay. In tropical and semi-tropical regions, the injury caused by hailstorms is far greater. Again, the day of battle and war. Compare especially Joshua 10:11, which, however, we need not suppose to have been in the mind of the writer. In ancient times, when the bow held the place in war, which has now occupied the rifle or the musket, a heavy hailstorm, striking full in the face of the combatants on one side, while it only fell on the backs of their adversaries, must have decided a battle. That's pretty crazy. Like that, hail. I mean, it's not that crazy. If you believe in like a spiritual hyperdimensional matrix, which I do, like that, there's all these like reverse Uno cards that can be played. All right. Verse 24. By what way is the light parted, which scattereth the east wind upon the earth? Who hath divided a watercourse for the overflowing of waters, or a way for the lightning of thunder? To cause it to rain on the earth where no man is, on the wilderness wherein there is no man, to satisfy the desolate and waste ground, and to cause the bud of the tender herb to spring forth. Hath the rain a father, or who hath begotten the drops of dew? Out of whose womb came the ice, and the hoary frosts of heaven? Who hath gendered it? I lost my place. Hath the rain a father, or who hath begotten the drops of dew? Out of whose womb came the ice, and the hoary frosts of heaven? Who hath gendered it? The waters are hid as with a stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Verse 31. This is going to get deep. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? So these are the Greek names for constellations. A lot of people don't know that it's complicated, but that we have this translation into English. I'm not going to get into that. There's a big thing about these constellations. Ellicott's commentary for English readers, the sweet influences with reference to their supposed effect on weather and the like. Or perhaps the word means chain or band with allusion to their groups. Glitter like a swarm of fireflies tangled in a silver braid. The context, however, of the bands of Orion seems rather to favor the other view. Canst thou regulate the influences exerted by these several constellations in either direction of increase or diminution? So, there does seem to be some, I don't want to say anything heretical here, but there does seem some playing of with some astrological concepts going on here. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't have to be like that. What are the sun, the moon, and the stars? Why did God make these things? Verse 32. Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? More constellations. Ellicott's commentary for English, Mazzaroth is commonly understood to mean the signs of the zodiac. And by the children of Arcturus, the 3 stars in the tail of Ursa Major. Okay, so what's going on with the zodiac and its role in creation? It's not brushed aside as insignificant. Verse 33, knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Again, Ellicott's commentary for English readers, the ordinances of heaven, that is the recurring seasons and their power of influencing earth. Are we just talking about like fall and spring, or are we talking about, Mercury and retrograde stuff? Like, what are we talking about? Verse 34, canst thou lift up thy voice to the clouds, that abundance of waters may cover thee? Canst thou send lightnings, that they may go and say unto thee, here we are? Who hath put wisdom in the inward parts, or who hath given understanding to the heart? Who can number the clouds in wisdom, or who can stay the bottles of heaven? When the dust groweth into hardness, and the clods cleave fast together, wilt thou hunt the prey for the lion, or fill the appetite of the young lions? When they couch in their dens and abide in the covert to lie in wait. Who provideth for the raven his food? When his young ones cry unto God, they wander for lack of meat. Okay, all done.